Chosen one. Stop scrolling. Heaven has paused your timeline to deliver this message, not because of coincidence, but because of divine orchestration. You are not like the rest. You were never meant to blend in, fade away, or simply survive. You were born to shake foundations, to break chains, to disturb the plans of darkness. Before the world labeled you, before you were ever misunderstood or overlooked, your name was spoken in the courts of heaven, not casually, not as a backup plan, but with authority. You were marked, summoned, and sent assigned for this generation. You're not here by accident. You didn't stumble across this message by chance. Every distraction that tried to keep you from hearing this moment was a strategic plan from the enemy. Why? Because if you hear this, you'll awaken. And if you awaken, you'll rise. And when you rise, the ground beneath your feet begins to tremble. Listen to me. This world has done its best to convince you that you're average, but your soul has never believed it. There's always been something inside of you that refused to settle, a holy unrest, a divine discomfort. You've smiled while silently carrying weight no one sees. You've stood in rooms that never saw you, but heaven never took its eyes off you. The evidence is in your warfare. You've been attacked in the womb, in the mind, in relationships, in finances, not because you're weak, but because you are dangerous. Let me say that again. You are a threat. The kind of threat darkness tries to bury before it blossoms. But guess what? You're still here. And not just surviving, you're starting to remember who you are. That fire you've tried to silence, it's still burning. That dream that won't die, it's not a fantasy, it's a calling. The enemy didn't fight you for who you are now, he fought you for who you are becoming, for the assignment written in your bloodline, for the promise that rests on your name. Let this truth crash through every lie you've believed. You have been marked and summoned. You don't need another confirmation. This is the confirmation. This is your spiritual wake-up call. You've been activated. This is heaven's voice saying, it's time. No more delay. No more running. No more playing small to make others comfortable. You were never designed to fit in their mold. You were set apart to break it. I know you've questioned your worth. I know you've wrestled with shame, fear, and feeling forgotten. But here's the truth. The enemy prays you never accept. You are chosen, not because you're perfect, but because God delights in using the least likely to do the unimaginable. It is written in the book of Micah, chapter 7, verse 8, "Do not gloat over me, my enemy. Though I have fallen, I will rise. Though I sit in darkness, the Lord will be my light." Chosen one. You've walked through your valley. You've been kept through what should have broken you. That wasn't coincidence, it was confirmation. You are still here, because something eternal still lives inside you. A flame that never went out. What's happening now is a spiritual emergency, not for the whole world, for you. God has interrupted your scroll, your day, your thoughts, to say this: the spiritual clock just hit 0. Obey. Now, this isn't a time for hesitation. The ones who hesitate now lose ground that cannot be regained. This is a moment that separates the awakened from the asleep, the called from the cowardly, the crown wearers from the crowd pleasers, and you are not the latter. You are chosen. You felt the urgency in your dreams. You felt heaven's pull even when your heart was numb. You've been nudged by the Spirit when everyone else saw nothing, And still, you kept going. Still, you didn't give up. Still, you've waited for a sign. This is it. You've prayed for confirmation. This is it. You've asked God to speak. This is Him. You've wondered if your time would ever come. It just did. Fear will try to pull you back. Doubt will try to mute your roar. But neither of those voices are yours. You were given power. You were given love. You were given a sound mind. And now, you are being given the command to move. Not just physically, but spiritually, emotionally, vocationally, prophetically. The steps you take now unlock things your bloodline never imagined. This is not about your talent. It's about your timing. It's not about your platform. It's about your posture. God doesn't need crowds. He needs obedience. He doesn't need the qualified. He anoints the willing. And right now, in the realm of the Spirit, your willingness is your weapon. Listen carefully. This may be the last gentle warning before the heavens shift again. When the door opens, it does not stay open forever. And when it shuts, it will be too late to bargain. Don't be one of the ones who looked back and whispered, "I should have moved," when I heard Him. No, it's not that you weren't called. It's that you ignored the clock. Don't do it, no matter the price. Do not disobey. Everything you've been carrying, every fire you've walked through, every betrayal you've endured, it all pointed to this holy interruption. You were never meant to blend in. You were created to disrupt. Now is the time to rise. Heaven is waiting. Hell is watching. And earth is groaning for the sons and daughters of God to be revealed. Chosen one. Move. Now. Type 777 the comments as your prophetic act of agreement. Seal it. Obey it. Mark it. You are aligning yourself with the sound of heaven. Like, share, and subscribe now if you haven't already. This is more than content. It is a divine lifeline sent to wake the remnant. You are marked in the spirit realm. There is something about you that heaven recognizes and hell cannot ignore. The markings are not physical, yet they are more real than the skin on your bones. You've carried them since before you had words to explain them, since before the people around you even noticed. But the spirit realm noticed. Oh, it noticed. When you walk into a place, atmospheres shift. Not because of your volume, not because of your title, but because of your presence. Something about you disturbs what's dormant. Light enters with you, and darkness can't remain neutral. You don't even have to open your mouth. Your presence alone announces that a chosen one has stepped in. And chosen ones don't walk with ordinary energy. They carry weight, assignment, authority. You've always felt this difference, haven't you? Even in childhood, even when you couldn't name it. You were the one who carried the burden when others didn't care. The one who saw what others missed. The one who couldn't sin comfortably, couldn't rebel without feeling heaven's tug, couldn't fit in even when you tried with everything you had. You felt rejected. But what you didn't realize is you were recognized by light, and recognized by darkness. That's the truth most people around you can't see. This isn't just about personality or pain. It's spiritual. From birth, your life began sending signals into the unseen realm. God placed His fingerprint on you. And because of that, every force that opposes His purpose has watched you closely. The battle hasn't been random. It's been targeted. Why do you think the attacks came so early, so consistent, so personal? Because something is on your life that threatens systems. You are a disruptor to the old order, a breaker of chains passed down through generations. You are a contradiction to what ran in your bloodline. Others bowed to it. You were born to break it. You are not like them, and you were never meant to be. When others around you chose comfort, you felt the pull toward consecration. When they stayed quiet, something in you ached to speak up. When they settled, your soul screamed for more. This is the mark of the chosen, and though it has made you lonely, misunderstood, and even ridiculed, it is the evidence of divine hand selection. Let's be clear, the marking is not about ego. It is not about being better. It is about being assigned. Marked ones carry both favor and responsibility. That's why your life hasn't been easy. Favor invites warfare. The enemy does not waste resources fighting the unassigned. The reason you've gone through more is because you've been entrusted with more. You didn't choose this path. This path chose you. There are battles you didn't volunteer for, but you were born for them. There are rooms you didn't ask to stand in, but your feet were ordered there. There are burdens you didn't seek out, but they found you, because God knew you'd carry them with integrity. And here's what you must understand. Being marked means you can't live like everyone else. You can't make peace with sin. You can't water down your truth. You can't numb your convictions to make people stay. That mark on your life comes with boundaries, boundaries that protect the oil, the assignment, the anointing. When you compromise, something inside of you grieves deeply. It's not guilt, it's your spirit being grieved. That's because the Holy Spirit has taken residence in you. And when God marks you, He doesn't leave you alone to figure it out. He walks with you, speaks to you, corrects you not to shame you, but to shape you. You felt it, haven't you? That moment you were about to go one way, and something unseen stopped you. That urge to text back, go back, fall back, and something yanked you back. That wasn't paranoia. That wasn't anxiety. That was divine protection. Because marked ones don't get to take ordinary detours. Your life is too significant. The prophet Elijah spoke, as recorded in the first book of Kings, chapter 18, verse 21. How long will you waver between two opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him. But if Baal is hot, follow him. But the people said nothing. There comes a moment when the marked must make a choice, to follow the tug of heaven, even when the cost is heavy, to walk away from familiar places, even when your flesh begs you to stay. This is not a game, and your life is not small. You are not invisible to the spirit realm. You are identified, watched, hunted, protected, guarded, and most of all marked. Hell knows who you are. This isn't an exaggeration. This isn't spiritual paranoia. This is truth that you must fully accept, because once you understand it, everything changes. The attacks weren't random. The cycles weren't coincidences. That storm that nearly broke you wasn't about your weakness, it was about your identity. You've been under surveillance. Demons don't waste time on the indifferent. The enemy doesn't chase after those who pose no threat. You're being watched, not because you're failing, but because you're rising. And rising chosen ones unsettle the kingdom of darkness. You need to hear this. Your struggle was noticed by hell because your spirit was noticed by heaven. That strange warfare you went through as a child, That heaviness you couldn't explain as a teenager. The depression that crept in when everything should have been fine. It was because something powerful in you was maturing and darkness tried to crush it before it came alive. But it failed. You're still standing. You see, Satan doesn't fear talent. He doesn't tremble at popularity. But he does fear a submitted vessel. Someone who won't bow to the patterns of this world. Someone who still praises with tears running down their face. Someone who says, "Yes, Lord," even when it costs everything. And you, chosen one, are becoming that kind of person. That's why you've been hit harder than most. That's why the relationships fell apart. That's why betrayal came when you least expected it. The enemy tried to break your trust, because trust is the soil where destiny grows. And if he could make you stop trusting God, he could make you bury the calling on your life. But even in your darkest nights, heaven never let go of you. Your tears were liquid prayers. Your silence was still heard. And in those moments where you almost gave up completely, angels surrounded you, even when you couldn't see it. This is why you must stop interpreting your battle as punishment. It was confirmation. The pressure, the pain, the patterns, they were meant to distract you from this very realization. You are feared in hell, not because of who you are on your own, but because of what you carry, because of the assignments tied to your name. Because when you say yes to God fully, hell loses ground. There's something you carry in your spirit that will demolish strongholds, not just for you, but for others. That's why the enemy's strategy has been multi-layered. Wear down your faith, tempt your flesh, isolate your heart, confuse your identity. But still, you're here, which means his plan has failed. But now, you must respond. Not emotionally, not with temporary hype, but with real, conscious awareness. Because the moment you realize that darkness recognizes you, you'll stop trying to fit in with it. You'll stop dancing near the fire, hoping not to get burned. You'll stop treating your calling like a hobby. The Word of God declares in the book of Psalms, chapter 23, verse 4, "Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil." You've been in that valley. You've heard the whispers of fear. You've seen the shadows of despair. But even there you kept walking. You didn't set up camp in the valley. You moved through it. Why? Because something in you refused to die. Hell knows you. But it also knows it can't stop you unless you agree with its lies. That's where the battle always begins. In the mind, the enemy isn't just after your peace, he's after your perception. Because if he can convince you that you're not chosen, not strong, not worthy, he can make you sit down when heaven told you to stand. But that ends today, right here. In this moment, you make a new declaration, not with fear, not with doubt, but with fire. A short but dangerous confession. Comment, I hear you. Lord. Say it aloud. Type it below. Let it echo in the spiritual realm. I hear you. Lord. Not, I feel you, because feelings change. But, I hear you. That's a commitment. That's a response. That's a declaration of alignment. It tells heaven you're listening. It tells hell you're not confused. It tells your own soul that silence will not be your story anymore. And when you do, don't be surprised if things begin to shift around you. Hell gets nervous when chosen ones wake up, because a chosen one who knows who they are is unstoppable. You don't need permission to rise. You've already been marked. Now all that's left is your agreement. And once you give it, chains break. Cycles shatter. Heaven moves. You're not just being noticed anymore. You're being launched. You've delayed long enough. You've been hovering at the edge of obedience, waiting for better timing, clear scenes, or more confidence. But deep down, you already know what you're supposed to do. That conviction that won't let you rest, that tug that keeps resurfacing no matter how many times you try to drown it out. It's not your imagination, it's your assignment calling. You've prayed for confirmation. But truthfully, this is not about knowing, it's about responding. The knowing has been there. The truth has been pressing against your soul, like a sealed letter begging to be opened. But obedience takes courage, and courage requires confrontation, not with people, but with the parts of yourself that still want comfort over calling. Delay is costly. What you don't confront will begin to consume you. When you resist divine timing, you start to normalize disobedience. What once convicted you now gets excused. What once stirred you now gets ignored. But the Spirit doesn't stop calling just because you stop answering. He waits and waits. And when you ignore him long enough, he doesn't disappear. He steps back. That's what most don't understand. Delay doesn't keep God's plan from happening. It keeps you from being part of it. He will move. He will act. His purpose will be fulfilled. The question is, will you still be in position when it comes? You've spent nights asking, God, what's my purpose? And he's been asking, when will you obey? This season is not about perfection. It's about alignment. God is not looking for someone flawless. He's looking for someone available. Someone who's willing to look foolish in front of people to be found faithful before him. Someone who's tired of the excuses. Someone who's reached the end of their own strength and finally says, whatever it takes. Lord, oh, you've danced with destiny long enough. It's time to say yes with your feet. Yes with your time. Yes with your discipline. Because when God calls you forward, standing still becomes disobedience. Let this be said plainly. Delayed obedience is disobedience. You don't get to set the terms of your surrender. When God says move, the only right response is movement. When he says speak, silence becomes rebellion, not out of fear, but out of reverence, because you know too much to keep living like you don't. You've seen too many signs, heard too many confirmations, felt too many spiritual tremors in your soul. There's nothing wrong with seeking clarity, but there's a difference between seeking and stalling. And for some, this delay has turned into disobedience wrapped in religious language. I'm waiting on God, they say. But really, they're avoiding the altar. Stop lying to yourself. You're not confused. You're just scared. But hear this. Fear has no right to lead you anymore. Your fear doesn't get to veto your calling. If fear had its way, you'd still be hiding, still running, still shrinking to fit in rooms God told you to outgrow. But something is shifting. Heaven is tightening the window. What was once tolerated in your past season is now unacceptable. What once felt optional now carries urgency. You've been entrusted with too much to keep playing safe. It was proclaimed in the second letter to Timothy. Chapter 1, verse 7. For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, of love, and of a sound mind. And so why are you still bowing to fear? You've got power, heaven-backed, spirit-filled. divine authority running through your veins. You've got love, the kind that casteth out fear. And you've got a sound mind discernment, insight, clarity. You lack nothing but commitment. That's what this season demands, total surrender. This isn't a suggestion. This is a divine interruption. Because the longer you delay, the more spiritually desensitized you become. You start calling conviction pressure. You start calling instruction legalism. You begin to justify your delay with the language of modern spirituality, but your spirit knows better. You know when you've lingered too long. You can feel when grace for a place has lifted. That old habit doesn't comfort like it used to. That old environment doesn't fit anymore. You laugh, but it's hollow. You socialize, but feel alone. You engage, but your soul knows it's out of alignment. And here you are again, face to face with the call. Not just a call to do something, a call to become someone, to become the version of yourself heaven had in mind when God formed you in the womb. The version that walks in purpose, that embraces holiness, that honors God with both fire and focus. So this is the moment. The line is drawn. Either you rise or you retreat. Either you obey or you excuse. But you cannot do both. Heaven is watching. Hell is nervous. And your spirit is ready. The delay has been noticed. You are not here by mistake. This moment right now is a divine recalibration, a holy redirection. You were scrolling, maybe half awake in your spirit, maybe discouraged, distracted, or drifting, but heaven intercepted you. This isn't just a video or a voice. This is divine alignment disguised as content, and something inside you already knows it. You've felt off center lately, like your spirit's compass has been spinning, trying to lock back onto true north. You've craved clarity, but didn't know where to look. You've prayed, but your prayers felt like echoes. You've asked for signs, but missed the whispers. So hear this clearly. This is your sign. This is heaven pulling you back into position. God doesn't need loud thunderclaps to get your attention. Sometimes He speaks through quiet, piercing truth. And that's what this message is doing. It's cutting through the noise, not to condemn you, but to reclaim you, to recalibrate you. You've feared. Yes, but you haven't been abandoned. You've wandered, but your path has not been erased. The GPS of grace hasn't turned off. It's simply been waiting for your next turn. And today, heaven is highlighting that turn, not with guilt, but with mercy. There's still time. You haven't missed it. You're not too late. God is a redeemer of time, a restorer of alignment, a resurrector of dreams. What you thought was lost is not beyond recovery. What you thought was wasted can still be used. This is your opportunity to come back to center, not just emotionally or mentally, but spiritually, because God doesn't just want to use you, He wants to align you. He wants you to walk in rhythm with heaven, to operate in flow, not just grind, to discern, not just decide, to lead, not from ambition, but from anointing. That's why the shaking happened. That's why things started falling apart. Not because you failed, but because God was removing what was built on shaky foundations. It felt like loss, but it was mercy. It felt like chaos, but it was calibration. The way you used to operate, your patterns, your pace, Your people was no longer compatible with where God is taking you. So he interrupted it. And yes, it hurt. Yes, it made you question everything. But now, you're here. Eyes open, spirit alert, heart ready, and heaven is whispering, come back to alignment. That alignment begins with submission. Not striving, not performing, just surrender. Surrender your calendar, your timelines, your ego, your comfort zones, because this time, what God is building with you requires a new level of obedience. This won't be like the last season. This won't be built on emotion. This will be built on endurance. The Word of God says in the book of Philippians, chapter 4, verse 13, I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. This is not about your strength. This is about His. You don't need to fix yourself before you align. You don't need to prove your worth. You just need to respond. God is not asking you to be perfect. He's asking you to be available. He supplies the strength. He supplies the strategy. He just needs your yes. And if this message is resonating deep in your spirit, if your heart is thumping with the weight of truth, don't just listen and scroll away. Pause. Respond. Take a moment to honor what your spirit is receiving. If you've been waiting for the right time to take your faith seriously, this is it. If you've been wondering whether God still has a place for you, this is your confirmation. And if you've felt distant from the voice of God, this is His voice reaching for you. So here's what I want you to do. Not from pressure, but from purpose. If this spoke to your spirit, share it with someone who's also trying to find their footing. You never know whose life it will reroute. Like this video, not just to boost it, but to mark it as a moment of spiritual agreement. And subscribe so you stay connected to what heaven is pouring out in this space. This is more than content. This is consecration. And every time you return here, you're returning to a well that refuses to run dry. You don't have to walk this out alone. You weren't meant to. There's a remnant rising, and you're part of it. Stay connected to the Word. Stay connected to this flow. Stay connected to your calling, because this is more than a message, it's a moment, a recalibration that will realign your entire life if you let it. And it starts now. Chosen one. You are being activated, not just emotionally stirred, not just inspired for a moment, but spiritually awakened. Something is shifting inside you. You can feel it, a divine current running beneath your skin, a trembling in your spirit. This isn't hype. This isn't coincidence. This is heaven setting off a spiritual alarm within your soul. You're not just being encouraged, you're being enlisted. And this enlistment comes with weight, with clarity, with holy fire. There is something rising up in you that cannot be contained by comfort anymore. You've tried to shrink, to blend in, to play it safe. But your spirit is pushing back now. The part of you that was born to war, born to build, born to carry heaven's banner, it's waking up. You are being called into divine alignment, not just for you, but for those connected to you. You've been chosen not only to survive the fire, but to come out carrying glory. You've seen too much, felt too much, lost too much to go back to playing small. Heaven is pressing in because heaven is preparing to send you. But before the sending comes the activation, and this is what that looks like: an undeniable inner shift, a refusal to keep cycling through confusion and passivity, a hunger that refuses to be silenced by distraction. You are being pulled into position. And no, it's not gentle. It's urgent. Because time is not waiting. And neither is your calling. You don't need another door to open. You are the door. You are the entry point for heaven to touch lives. Break chains. Heal hearts. And you cannot carry that kind of anointing casually. You must be fully alert, fully yielded, fully activated. The realm of darkness hopes you stay numb and neutral, but you're about to ruin its plans. Because when a chosen one wakes up, everything shifts. You've already started feeling it. The discomfort in old conversations, the weariness in old routines, the resistance when you try to go back to what used to be enough. That's not confusion, it's conviction. That's not boredom, it's birthing. God is stripping away what's dulling your fire. He's calling you into depth, into clarity, into assignment. And the moment you say yes in your spirit, heaven takes notice. The angels assigned to you begin to move differently. The atmosphere around you begins to rearrange. Doors begin to open, not for your comfort, but for your calling. Suddenly, connections come not by networking, but by divine appointment. Suddenly, favor locates you not for your ego, but for your obedience. This is the season of being set apart. No more living half awake. No more blending in. You weren't called to be neutral. You were called to be a signal, a signpost, pointing others back to the heart of God. That's why He's activating you with such intensity, because the time is now. Scripture says in the Gospel of John, chapter 14, verse 27, "Peace I leave with you, my peace I give you. I do not give to you as the world gives." The activation won't come with worldly comfort. It comes with divine peace, peace that surpasses logic, that holds you in transition, that grounds you in chaos. That peace is part of your armor, because when God activates you, He doesn't send you empty, He clothes you in peace, power, and purpose. But this can't be passive. You must respond, not with long prayers or poetic words, just with a number, a prophetic number, a marker in the spirit realm that says, "I heard, I receive, I accept." So right now, type the number 444 inch, the comments. Yes, 444. Let this be your spiritual signature, your agreement with the summons on your life. Why 444? Because it is a number of spiritual grounding, foundation, and divine alignment. It symbolizes that heaven is building something through you, and you are being fastened, secured, and established for the assignment ahead. When you type 444, you're not typing for the algorithm. You're typing for the altar. It's your response to the whisper, "Yes, Lord, establish me, ready me, send me." Oh, don't overthink it. Just obey. Heaven doesn't need you to feel ready. It needs you to say yes. And when you do, power begins to flow where there was once fear. Clarity begins to speak where there was once confusion. You are not lost. You are not behind. You are being aligned. So lift your head, silence the doubt, and type 444 right now, not as a number, but as a declaration. I accept the activation. On. This is the hour. You've been summoned. You've been stirred. And now, you've been activated. This assignment is not optional. This isn't something you get to negotiate with heaven. This isn't a volunteer opportunity. This is a divine mandate etched into the very framework of your existence before your first breath was drawn. You didn't stumble into purpose. You were sent with it. And now, the time for delay has ended. You may not feel ready. You may still see your flaws, your fears, your inconsistencies. But heaven sees something greater, the agreement on your life, the unshakable, irrevocable mark that declares, you were born for this. You were chosen to carry something holy, something heavy, something heaven-ordained. This is not just about destiny. It's about obedience. You can't pick and choose which parts of your assignment you want to carry. You don't get to say yes to the stage and no to the secret place. You don't get to say yes to influence, but no to intercession. This is a full surrender, a whole life offering, and it won't wait for your comfort. The longer you postpone obedience, the more ground darkness claims by default. Every moment you wait to step into what God has ordained, the enemy rejoices, because he knows your yes is dangerous. He knows your obedience unlocks chains, not just for you, but for the people assigned to your voice, your hands, your presence. You are not a background character. You are a breaker, a builder, a voice in the wilderness calling others into light. That's why you felt the warfare so intensely, because hell knows that if you ever fully obey, its hold over entire bloodlines will collapse. If you ever fully step in, everything will shift. And whether you acknowledge it or not, you're already feeling the weight of this assignment. It's why the old pleasures no longer satisfy you. It's why shallow conversations exhaust you. It's why normal life feels like sandpaper against your spirit. You've outgrown what once numbed you. Your soul is maturing fast, and it refuses to let you stay where God is no longer present. The truth is, you were never designed to live small. You weren't created to build a life that fits in a box of cultural expectations. You are an ambassador of heaven, carrying eternity in mortal flesh. This is not about success. It's about surrender. God doesn't need you to be impressive. He needs you to be obedient, because obedience opens doors that hustle never could. Obedience breaks chains that talent can't touch. Obedience provokes the supernatural. It brings heaven to earth through your yes. But here's the tension. Obedience always costs something. It costs popularity. It costs convenience. Sometimes it costs relationships. But what you gain is infinitely greater. When you say yes to this assignment, you're saying no to average, no to compromise, no to spiritual passivity, and yes to discipline, yes to holiness, yes to being misunderstood, yes to walking away when everyone else is settling. The old version of you cannot survive where God is taking you. Your assignment will require a death to the counterfeit version of yourself. That version that was shaped by people's opinions, that version that was more concerned with comfort than calling, that version that feared failure more than it feared disobedience. That version must die so the real you can rise. The one God designed, the one God anointed, the one hell is terrified of. It is written in the book of Jeremiah, chapter 1, verse 5. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. I appointed you as a prophet to the nations. That wasn't just spoken to Jeremiah. That was a spiritual blueprint for all marked ones. God knew you. Before your trauma, before your detours, before your doot. He knew you, and He appointed you. That means this assignment isn't something you discover, it's something you remember, something your soul has always carried. The reason you've wrestled with identity is because you've felt the tension between your calling and your comfort zone. But now that wrestling is breaking, God is not calling you to figure everything out. He's calling you to follow, to move when He says move, to speak when He says speak, to trust even when it makes no sense. Because this assignment is not optional, it's not attached to applause, it's not validated by followers, it is stamped by eternity. And heaven is watching, not to shame you, but to back you, to release favor, strategy, strength, and wisdom. As soon as you align, the moment you take your assignment seriously, everything around you begins to reflect that shift. Heaven begins to partner with you in visible ways, not because you're perfect, but because you finally said yes. You've been circling this long enough. It's time to walk in what's been waiting for you. You were never meant to blend in. That pressure you've felt your entire life, the constant awareness that you're different, that you don't quite fit, that no matter how much you try to shrink yourself to match your surroundings, something in you keeps pushing against it. That's not a flaw. That's the fingerprint of God on your spirit. That's the invisible evidence of your distinction. You've always been different, haven't you? Even when you didn't have the words for it. You felt it. When others were at ease with shallow things, your soul longed for something deeper. When others celebrated compromise, you felt that quiet tug in your spirit telling you, this isn't it. When others could turn a blind eye, your heart burned with unseen conviction. That wasn't personality. That wasn't coincidence. That was consecration. God never designed you to blend in. He didn't call you out of the world so you could mimic its systems. You were not called to be another echo. You were called to be a voice, a living contradiction to what is expected, a reminder that holiness still matters, that obedience still carries weight, that faith still moves mountains. This is why the crowd never truly embraced you. It's not that you're too much. It's that your light exposes things. You walk into rooms and shift atmospheres not because of who you think you are, but because of the fire that refuses to die inside you. That's unsettling to those who have built comfort around compromise. That's threatening to those who benefit from lukewarm living. You being different is not a burden, it's a banner. You carry a spiritual distinction that cannot be explained logically. You've tried to fix yourself, to edit yourself into smaller versions so people wouldn't feel uncomfortable. You've quieted your discernment to avoid sounding too intense. You've dumbed down your vision to avoid losing friends. But the more you did that, the more miserable you became. Because your soul refuses to be boxed in. God set you apart. And your attempt to erase that separation has only created tension inside. That's the real source of your inner conflict. Not that you don't know who you are, but that you're trying to unknow it, trying to forget what God showed you, trying to silence what heaven revealed, trying to trade identity for acceptance. But you're not called to blend, you're called to burn, to carry a light that doesn't just illuminate, but disturbs. Your presence convicts not because you judge people, but because you carry clarity. Your steps cause agitation in the spirit realm because you're walking with purpose, and where purpose goes, pretenders get nervous. There's a reason your exile has felt so long. Isolation wasn't punishment. It was preparation. While you wept in silence, God was teaching you His voice. while you endured betrayal. He was showing you the difference between loyalty and attachment, while doors slammed in your face. He was carving a new door with your name etched into it. The wilderness wasn't wasted. It was strategic. He used it to strip the need for validation from your heart. He used it to remove every counterfeit platform, every false friend, every insecure motive. He used it to prove that what's on your life can't be borrowed, it has to be forged. And now you're emerging. Not broken, but branded. Not bitter, but built. You don't need the crowd's approval because you've been consecrated in secret. You don't need permission because heaven already commissioned you. It is written in the book of Romans, chapter 12, verse 2. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. You were never supposed to conform. You were always called to transform. But transformation is loud. It's unsettling. It turns tables over. It flips norms upside down. It doesn't wait for applause. It moves when God moves, even when it looks like madness to the world. You'll never be able to return to normal. You've seen too much, felt too much, carried too much to go back to blending in. You were marked, and the mark cannot be erased. You'll always stand out. But it's time to stop seeing that as rejection and start seeing it as selection. You are not misunderstood because you're flawed. You are misunderstood because you are anointed, because you carry revelation that was never meant to fit in average conversations, because you have a spirit that refuses to stay asleep. So stop explaining yourself to people who were never meant to understand you. Stop trying to make sense to those not assigned to your journey. You don't owe anyone normal. You owe heaven your yes. You've been set apart. Embrace it. There is a shift happening in you. It's not emotional hype. It's not fleeting motivation. It's a deep internal awakening that refuses to be silenced. You feel it in moments of quiet. You sense it when you try to return to old routines. You hear it echoing in your spirit, even when the world around you is loud. This is not imagination. This is spiritual momentum. God is stirring something in your soul that will not let you settle. You've tried. You've tried to numb it with distractions. Tried to drown it out with routine. Tried to pretend that you're fine with playing small. But the fire inside you keeps breaking through the cracks. And that fire isn't here to comfort you, it's here to call you up. There is a version of you. Heaven is calling into the light. A version that's bold, surrendered, disciplined, set apart. That version doesn't compromise. That version doesn't beg for validation. That version carries weight in the spirit realm and walks with authority. But in order to become that version, you have to make a choice. You can't become who you were born to be while still clinging to who you used to be. The crossroad is here now. You've reached the edge of your comfort. Now the Spirit is saying, step over. Step into the unknown. Into obedience. Into full surrender. You are not just being invited. You are being urged. Because delay is no longer safe. Your spirit knows it. You can feel the pull. You can sense the urgency. This isn't just about you, it's about what you were born to carry for others. It's about the people who are waiting for your obedience, for your testimony, for your breakthrough to lead the way. And let's be honest, you've tried disobedience. You've tasted rebellion. You've lived the cycle of almost stepping in and pulling back. It only left you more tired, more empty, more restless, because you weren't built for rebellion. You were built for reverence, for alignment, for glory. That's why you feel that unrest in your soul. You're not broken, you're becoming. And every time you hesitate, heaven nudges you again, not to shame you, but to remind you, to call you back into rhythm, because you were never meant to coast. You were created to conquer. It was proclaimed in the book of Ephesians, chapter 2, verse 10. For we are God's handiwork, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which God prepared in advance for us to do. You were prepared in advance, which means this moment was not a surprise. Heaven saw it coming, and heaven is ready for your yes. But your yes doesn't begin in front of crowds. It begins in the unseen, in private obedience, in quiet discipline, in small decisions that build spiritual muscle. And every time you obey in secret, you gain strength in the spirit realm. That's why the enemy wants to wear you down with distractions, to make you feel overwhelmed, to keep you exhausted by scrolling and scrolling, so you never stop long enough to respond. But not today. Today, something in you is awakening, and it's time to put your voice behind that awakening. Right here, right now, with one small act of public agreement, not for validation, but as a spiritual statement. Comment below. Send me, Lord, M. Say it with trembling if you must. Say it even if you're still unsure. Say it, even if your hands are shaking, because that phrase, send me, Lord, isn't just a comment. It's a declaration, a prophetic response to the tug on your spirit. It's what Isaiah said when he stood before God's presence and felt overwhelmed by his own imperfection. He didn't say, I'm ready. He didn't say, I'm worthy. He just said, here am I, send me. And heaven moved. When you type those words, something shifts, because you're giving God permission to interrupt your patterns. You're inviting heaven to take over your schedule, your mindset, your identity. You're surrendering your plans for His glory. It's not about how many people see your comment. It's about the fact that hell sees it, the fact that heaven records it, the fact that you step into agreement with the call that's been chasing you for years. Don't overthink it. Don't scroll past it. Just pause and say it. Send me, Lord. And watch how everything begins to move around you because of one small, powerful yes. You're not alone in this. There is a remnant rising, a scattered army of misfits, outcasts, and unlikely ones who have been hidden, pressed, and refined in silence. For years, you've felt like the only one. You've asked, why do I feel so different? Why don't I fit anywhere? Why does it seem like everyone else is moving forward while I stay stuck? But what if your delay wasn't denial? What if your hiding place was actually holy ground? God has a pattern. Before He reveals a vessel, He conceals it. Before He sends a voice, He silences it in the wilderness. Before He uses a soul to shift the world, He breaks them in the secret place until there's nothing left to prove and everything left to pour. And that's been you. The years of feeling invisible, that wasn't punishment, it was preservation. God has been preparing you in isolation so He can release you in purpose. He's been deconstructing every false identity, stripping off every expectation the world put on you, and reminding you, you were never meant to be like them. You are part of the misfit remnant, a generation that doesn't blend in, a people set apart not by status, not by title, but by spiritual fire. A remnant that walks with bruised heels and blazing eyes. A remnant that carries authority born not from a platform, but from pain. You were trained in the dark so that when the light hits you, you carry something real. That's why you couldn't stay comfortable in surface-level circles. That's why compromise never sat well in your spirit. That's why you didn't find lasting joy in shallow relationships, empty religion, or worldly success. God ruined your taste for what doesn't align with your destiny, because He's raising you to lead, not in a traditional way, not with microphones or spotlights, but with presence, with purity, with unwavering obedience. You don't need a stage to carry fire. You don't need a following to make demons flee. All you need is the oil that only comes from crushing, and you, chosen one, have been crushed for a reason. It is written in the first letter of Peter, chapter 2, verse 9, but you are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, God's special possession, that you may declare the praises of Him who called you out of darkness into His wonderful light. You've been called out of darkness, and now you're about to call others out with you. There's a boldness rising in you that wasn't there before. It's not arrogant. It's anointed. You don't need to have all the answers. You just need to walk in what you do know, that God has chosen you, cleansed you, and commissioned you. The misfit remnant is not a trend. It's a move of God, and you're part of it. But you can't walk this out in isolation forever. God didn't just call you out. He's calling you into something, into community, into covenant, into alignment with others who carry the same fire. You've cried out for people who get it, people who are hungry, people who live with eternity in their eyes. And the Spirit is saying, they're here. You've found your tribe. This space right here is more than just content. It's confirmation. You're not the only one who feels like this. You're not the only one waking up to the weight of your calling. There are others rising in different nations, from different pasts, with different voices, but carrying the same fire. That's why this moment matters. So, if this word has spoken to your soul, stay connected, not for entertainment, but for equipping. Like this message, not for the sake of numbers, but to mark your agreement with the truth that just confronted you. Share it with someone who's also been wandering, questioning, or losing hope. You have no idea how a single click can reroute someone's entire destiny. And subscribe, not because you need more noise, but because heaven is building something here. This isn't about a personality. This is about a presence. And if your spirit has been stirred, it's because the oil on this message matches the oil forming in you. This is your tribe. This is your call. This is your confirmation. You're not crazy. You're not behind. You're not broken. You are becoming. And you're not becoming alone. The remnant is rising, and you're one of them. You carry a dangerous light. Not the kind of light that simply decorates, it disrupts. It exposes. It awakens. It burns. The kind of light you carry doesn't make darkness feel comfortable. It makes darkness panic. And that's why you've been attacked the way you have. This isn't about bad luck. This isn't karma. This isn't some endless cycle of random suffering. It's warfare. Spiritual warfare. You've been under pressure. Not because you're weak, but because you're loaded. The darkness around you knows what's inside you, even when you don't fully see it yet. You've walked through seasons that almost broke you, but they didn't. You've endured emotional earthquakes, spiritual famines, mental battles, and somehow your faith survived. Why? Because your spirit carries something too dangerous for the enemy to ignore, something forged in the fire, something heaven sent and hell shaking. You've been tested early because you're called to lead later. When the enemy sees light in someone, his strategy is always the same: snuff it out before it grows. Attack them while they're young. Distract them before they mature. Wound them so deeply that they never feel worthy again. Twist their identity. Poison their trust. Bury them in shame. And hope they never crawl out. But you crawled out. You didn't stay buried. You didn't lose your light. In fact, it shines brighter now because every time the enemy thought he had you, you survived. And not only did you survive, you learned. You grew. You began to discern. You began to see, not just the world around you, but the war beneath it. And now, you are dangerous. Dangerous to cycles. Dangerous to generational curses. Dangerous to passivity. Dangerous to every system and structure that keeps people bound in fear. You don't just walk into rooms, you carry authority into them. Not because you demand it, but because your presence is saturated with glory from the secret place. You've paid for this oil. Others don't know what it cost you. They don't know the tears you cried in silence, the nights you couldn't sleep, the prayers that were more groaning than words, the seasons of silence where heaven felt quiet and hell felt loud. But even in those moments, your light kept flickering, kept burning. And now, it's undeniable. You are a vessel of fire, and that fire is not polite. It confronts. Your light doesn't just inspire people. It forces them to choose. Choose to awaken or retreat. To come closer to God or walk away. That's why some people can't stay close to you. It's not personal, it's spiritual. Your light agitates what they're trying to hide. This has nothing to do with arrogance. This isn't about being better than anyone else. It's about stewardship. You've been entrusted with something eternal, and it's not meant to be dimmed for anyone's comfort. You weren't lit to be hidden. You were lit to ignite. The Word of God says in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 5, verse 14, "You are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden." You're not supposed to blend into the background. You're not supposed to stay silent when truth is needed. You're not supposed to downplay your fire to keep others from being convicted. You are the light of the world, and that means resistance comes with the territory. You weren't given this light to live timidly. You were given it to drive out darkness. Every time you show up with integrity in a world obsessed with compromise, you shine. Every time you love in places full of hate, you shine. Every time you obey God when it costs you something, you shine. And here's the truth most won't tell you. The brighter you burn, the more visible you become. The more visible you become, the more you're targeted. That's why the warfare increased. That's why the tension escalated. Because darkness hoped you'd dim down. But you didn't. You won't. There's a war for your flame. Not because it's small, but because it's powerful. You are not someone simply trying to survive this life. You're someone born to shift the atmosphere everywhere you go. You're someone who carries keys. Someone who unlocks chains. Someone who makes the enemy nervous just by standing up in truth. So, protect your light. Guard it with prayer. Fuel it with the word. Keep it alive through worship. Let your oil be costly, but never dry. Because the world doesn't need another performer, it needs light bearers. And you, chosen one, are exactly that. Burn bright, burn holy, burn until darkness flees. You've survived for a reason. There were battles meant to bury you, situations designed to silence you, attacks sent to make sure you never found out who you really are. And yet, here you are, still breathing, still believing, still burning with a light that the enemy could not extinguish. What you've endured wasn't random. Some of the people closest to you couldn't have handled even a portion of what you've gone through, but you bore it. And not just once. You've endured storms that came one after another, testing every inch of your strength, and still your spirit stood up. Again and again. Why? Because you weren't just being attacked. You were being trained. You've survived because you were meant to be sent. There is a call on your life so weighty, so urgent, that the enemy launched an early assault to abort it. He tried to get you to self-destruct before you ever discovered your true identity. He targeted your mind, your relationships, your body, your hope. He sent people to discourage you, circumstances to confuse you, and timelines to frustrate you. Because if you ever stepped into alignment, hell's grip would start to slip. And now, that moment has come. You've been marked not just to carry pain, but to carry power. What you thought was punishment was really preparation. The trauma didn't disqualify you, it qualified you. The rejection wasn't random, it was redirection. The loss wasn't the end, it was the setup. You weren't meant to die in it, you were meant to rise from it with fire in your lungs and purpose in your veins. Everything you've walked through has become part of your authority. When you speak now, you speak from experience. When you worship now, you worship from the valley. When you pray now, you pray from the trenches. You have seen what darkness looks like up close. And now, you have zero tolerance for it. You've fought in secret. And now, God is calling you to lead in the open. Not perfectly, not publicly at first, but faithfully. Your scars are not shameful. They are evidence. They are proof that hell launched its best, but failed. And now you carry a depth, a wisdom, a mantle that can't be taught in classrooms or copied from sermons. It had to be earned in the dark. But now the darkness has lost its grip, and the call is growing louder. This isn't just survival anymore. This is sending. God is commissioning you to move forward, to take what tried to break you and build with it. To turn your wilderness into a well, to carry healing where you once carried pain, to lead others out of the very prison you once lived in. And yes, it's scary. Yes, it's overwhelming. But don't mistake intimidation for disqualification. You're not disqualified. You're delivered. You're not too late. You're right on time. You're not behind. You're being released. It is written in the book of Genesis, chapter 50, verse 20, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. Oh, what tried to harm you only refined you, and what refined you now empowers you to save others." That's the next chapter. That's the real reason you're still here. And now, right here, right now, I want you to make a declaration, a number, a spiritual code in the atmosphere. Comment the number 777 below. Why 777? Because it symbolizes completion, divine fulfillment, and supernatural wholeness. It represents the end of wandering and the beginning of walking. Not just walking in survival, but in assignment. Not just wondering what your purpose is, but becoming it. When you type 777, you're saying, I'm ready. I'm sent. I will not waste what I survived. You're putting the spirit realm on notice. That the survivor in you is now stepping into the role of servant. That the pain you endured is now fuel for purpose. Let the enemy regret ever letting you live. Let every battle become a testimony. Let every scar become a sword. And let this be the moment you declare, I didn't survive just to sit. I survived to be sent. So don't just read this. Respond. Your past was the proving ground, but your future, that's the launching pad. And the countdown has already begun. 777, the number of divine release. 777, the sound of your survival turning into strategy. 777, your yes in numeric form. You've made it through. Now it's time to move. There is a cost to your calling. This is the part many avoid. The part many don't talk about. We love the sound of being chosen. We celebrate the idea of being set apart. We crave the anointing, the power, the breakthrough. But what we often overlook is the price that comes with divine purpose. God's calling is free to receive, but costly to carry. And if you're honest, you've already felt the edge of that cost. You've lost friendships that couldn't handle the new you. You've walked away from environments that once felt like home. You've chosen silence when you could have clapped back. You've wrestled with loneliness, misunderstood by those who still only see you through the lens of your past. But here's the truth. The higher the calling, the deeper the cutting. God doesn't just use anyone for kingdom assignments. He uses the surrendered, and surrender hurts. Because it means you don't get to hold on to your preferences, your timing, your comfort zones. It means releasing control and choosing obedience again and again, even when it costs you your pride, your convenience, or your applause. Your calling is costly because it is holy. You weren't created to live comfortably within culture. You were crafted to confront it, not with arrogance, but with unshakable truth. And truth will always cost you something. Sometimes it costs relationships. Sometimes it costs opportunities. Sometimes it costs your plan for your own life. That's why so many settle. Because sacrifice doesn't come with instant reward. Obedience doesn't always feel exciting. And carrying something sacred means you have to say no more often than you say yes. Not out of legalism, but out of loyalty to the one who called you. And yes, there are moments when it feels like too much. When you ask, why me? When you wish the fire would ease. But deep down, you know, you were never built for easy. You were built for eternal. And the eternal doesn't come cheap. Even Jesus, in the Garden of Gethsemane, felt the weight of the cost. He said, if it be possible, let this cup pass from me. But then he said what every chosen one must learn to say, nevertheless, not my will, but yours be done. That's the line in the sand. That's the true surrender. When your desires kneel at the feet of divine will, when your plans so His purpose can live. You have a birthright, but you also have a cross. And in every generation, there comes a moment where chosen ones must decide, will I carry it, or will I trade it? Esau gave up his birthright for a bowl of comfort. Judas traded his place at the table for a pocket of silver. And many today still sell their soul for applause, for convenience, for validation. But you are not them. You cannot afford to trade your crown for temporary peace. You cannot keep silencing your conviction to make room for comfort. The price of your calling may be high, but the cost of disobedience is far greater. Disobedience costs time. It costs clarity. It costs access. Every time you delay obedience, you put distance between you and the fulfillment of what was written over your life. You may still be saved, but you won't walk in power. You may still be gifted, but you'll be misaligned. And nothing is more painful than knowing you were called, yet stuck outside your assignment. God's grace is real. His mercy is unshakable, but His call demands response. You can't just admire the idea of being chosen. You have to live like it. You have to walk away from what's familiar. You have to shut doors you once begged to open. You have to choose holiness when no one's watching, because that's what separates the called from the chosen, the response. It is written in the Gospel of Luke, chapter 9, verse 23. Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross daily and follow me. And daily, not just once, not just when it feels good, but every day, when it's lonely, when it's heavy, when it's silent, when obedience costs more than applause can pay. And even then, it's worth it. Because what you gain is not just impact, not just influence. What you gain is intimacy with the one who formed you, closeness with the creator of your soul, peace that defies understanding, authority that doesn't fade, and the unshakable knowing that you walked in what you were born for. So count the cost and pay it gladly, because nothing this world could ever offer compares to the glory waiting for those who obey. Mercy is still holding the door. Even now, after all the running, all the doubting, all the wrestling, you're still being pursued. Grace hasn't walked away. Mercy hasn't slammed the door. God is still calling your name in the quiet, not with anger, not with condemnation, but with holy urgency, because He knows how close you are to missing it. There is a threshold in the spirit, a line between conviction and numbness, between obedience and rebellion, between walking with God and simply walking in circles. And that line, for many, is closer than they think, not because God has moved, but because they've silenced the warnings. Conviction is a gift, but if you ignore it long enough, it starts to fade. You don't drift away from God in a moment. You drift by inches, a small compromise here, a quiet excuse there, a delay that turns into disobedience, a voice that once stirred you now feels distant, not because He stopped speaking, but because your ears stopped listening. And if you're honest, you've felt that drift trying to pull you under. You've known the moments when your heart felt hard, your mind distracted, your spirit heavy with excuses. You've justified things you once repented for. You've stayed longer in places you were told to leave. You've numbed your discomfort instead of confronting it. But even in your distance, even in your detours, God has never stopped reaching. This is not about shame. It's about awakening. The longer you wait, the easier it becomes to ignore the warning signs. But the voice of mercy is still speaking, still pleading, come back. Before the door closes. Because, make no mistake, doors don't stay open forever. there is a point where grace steps back, not because God is cruel, but because God is holy. He offers mercy, but He doesn't force it. He invites, but He will not drag you through. If you choose rebellion long enough, your heart becomes blind to what used to move you. The Word of God warns us in the book of Hebrews, chapter 10, verse 26. It says, "If we deliberately keep on sinning after we have received the knowledge of the truth, no sacrifice for sins is left." End. That verse isn't meant to terrify, it's meant to wake us up. You've received the knowledge of the truth. You've tasted grace. You've heard the voice. You know the difference between conviction and compromise, and that means you are no longer in the dark. You are accountable, not just for what you've done, but for what you're called to. There's no such thing as neutral in the Spirit. You're either moving toward God or away from Him, and every day you delay obedience. You're not just standing still, you're losing ground, not because God is moving further, but because your spirit is growing colder. Conviction fades when we ignore it. The heart hardens when we reject truth long enough, and the longer you linger, the more you normalize distance from God. But the voice is still calling. Mercy still lingers at the threshold, still holding the door open, still whispering, "Come back before you forget what my presence feels like." Because that's the real danger, not just sin, but separation. Not just falling, but forgetting. Forgetting how it felt to be close. Forgetting how it felt to worship freely. Forgetting the urgency that used to grip your spirit. You are not too far gone, but you are dangerously close to settling. Settling for a version of life that looks spiritual but lacks surrender. Settling for noise without power, for routine without fire, for knowledge without obedience. And that kind of life may impress people, but it cannot move heaven. You were made for more than a lukewarm existence. That's why God has been pressing you. That's why the conviction keeps returning. That's why this message found you. Because mercy is fighting for your yes. Mercy is interrupting your patterns. Mercy is giving you one more chance before the door closes. You know what God has asked of you. You've just been negotiating. But this is not a contract, it's a covenant. And covenants require death. Death to your way. Death to your excuses. Death to your timeline. And if you won't lay it down willingly, God will begin to take His hand off what you've built in rebellion. He will allow what you've idolized to collapse. He will allow the false security to crumble, not to destroy you, but to save you, because He'd rather you be broken and humbled than celebrated and lost. So what will you do with this moment? Because mercy is still holding the door, but it won't stay open forever. Surrender is not weakness. In a world obsessed with control, power, and being in charge of your destiny, the idea of laying everything down sounds backward. But in the kingdom of God, surrender is not defeat, it's divine strategy. It's how you win battles that human strength could never conquer. And today, this is the word over your life. It's time to surrender fully, not just emotionally, not just with your words, but with your life. You've held on long enough. You've tried to do it your way. You've juggled obedience with comfort. You've attempted to walk halfway in and halfway out, and it's exhausting. You feel it. The inner tension, the spiritual restlessness, the lack of peace. That's not coincidence. That's divine friction. That's heaven pressing against your partial surrender. Because partial surrender is still rebellion. God doesn't want your performance. He wants your heart. All of it. The messy parts, the doubting parts, the broken, fearful, uncertain. I'm not sure if I'm enough parts. That's the beautiful truth of surrender. It doesn't require perfection, just honesty. But this surrender must be public, not performative, but real. When your heart finally bows, everything else begins to shift. Your mind becomes clear, your steps become sure, your voice becomes bold. Because God does not empower the prideful, He empowers the yielded. There is a reason heaven keeps interrupting your life. This moment, this message, these words, they're not just encouragement, they're confrontation. Not to harm you, but to heal you. To rescue you from another year of spiritual stagnation. To free you from the illusion of control. To deliver you from the prison of your own indecision. And here's what you need to hear. You don't need more time. You need more trust. Obedience is not about having all the answers. It's about saying yes without them. Abraham said yes without knowing the destination. Mary said yes without understanding the cost. Esther said yes, risking her life. And every one of them stepped into divine purpose because of one dangerous decision: obedience. It's your turn now. No more rehearsing the risk. No more waiting for perfect peace. Peace comes after obedience, not before it. The delay has already cost you too much. And every moment you hesitate, someone else's breakthrough waits. Your obedience isn't just about you, it's about the people tied to your life. There are destinies connected to your yes. There are family members whose chains will break when you rise. There are children watching your every step, learning what real surrender looks like. There are people who need your voice, your presence, your story. You can't afford to play small anymore. This is a holy moment, a spiritual crossroads. And if this message is confronting you in the deepest places of your heart, don't ignore it. This is your burning bush moment, your upper room encounter, your drop the nets invitation. It is written in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 16, verse 24. If anyone would come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. Jesus didn't say, take up your comfort. He said, take up your cross. That means you carry the weight of purpose, the sting of obedience, and the power of resurrection. Surrender isn't the end of your freedom, it's the beginning of it. So here's what I want you to do. If this message hit your spirit, don't let it pass by in silence. Let your yes be heard in the spiritual realm, not just whispered in your heart. Comment below, I will obey. No, it's more than a sentence. It's a statement, a prophetic declaration. When you type those words, you're telling heaven, I'm ready. You're telling hell, you lost. And you're telling your own soul, no more running. And say it even if you're scared. Say it even if you're not sure what obedience looks like yet. Say it because the act of typing those words could become your first act of surrender. I will obey. If this word confirmed what you've been hearing in your spirit, like this message, not just for visibility, but as a sign of agreement, when you engage, you're not just boosting a video, you're building an altar. You're acknowledging, yes, Lord, I hear you, and I won't ignore it. And share this with someone you know is in the middle of the same war. Someone stuck in the battle between comfort and calling. Sometimes All it takes is one word to wake up a soul. You could be the vessel God uses. And lastly, subscribe. Stay connected. This isn't just a place for content, it's a gathering place for the remnant. For those like you who are saying yes. For those ready to go all in. No more half-hearted devotion. No more spiritual spectatorship. Just fire. Just obedience. Just surrender. You've come too far to stay where you are. So, go ahead, type it. Speak it. Live it. I will obey. You're becoming an earthquake in the spirit. Not the kind that makes noise for attention, but the kind that causes silent foundations of darkness to crack without warning. You may not always see it, but your obedience is shifting atmospheres. Every time you choose God over comfort, every time you walk away from what once trapped you, every time you say yes when everything inside of you is trembling, that is when heaven moves through you. You weren't called to live a quiet, neutral life. You were called to shake things, to unsettle systems built on lies, to carry a presence that interrupts cycles. You were born to rupture generational curses, to disarm principalities, to be a walking contradiction to everything hell hoped your bloodline would become. That's why your process has been so violent. It hasn't been easy because the mantle you carry isn't light. You've been contended for in the spirit, fought over, tracked, marked, and yet preserved. You've walked through things others would have collapsed under. Not because you're superhuman, but because God has been building something deeper in you than anyone can see. You've been deepened so you can be dangerous. And now you're stepping into the kind of alignment that scares the darkness. Because when a chosen one becomes fully surrendered, when they stop negotiating and start obeying, when they lose interest in applause and become obsessed with the altar, hell trembles. Not metaphorically, literally. The darkness knows your name. It knows your voice. It knows that every time you step into obedience, it loses territory. It knows your worship isn't for show, it's warfare. It knows your tears are baptizing the next generation. It knows your fire doesn't flicker. When storms rise, it spreads. You are not a passive believer. You are a divine disruptor. And divine disruptors don't walk through life unnoticed. You've felt the tension of that, haven't you? You've walked into rooms where people couldn't explain why they reacted the way they did. Some were drawn to you instantly. Others were agitated by your presence, and you hadn't said a word. That's not personal. That's prophetic. Because you don't just bring energy, you bring presence. Your presence carries the residue of where you've been with God. It carries the sound of your yes, the weight of your prayers, the scars of your surrender, and when you show up, things begin to shift, not because you're loud, but because you're aligned. Alignment is louder than volume. You're not becoming more visible for ego's sake. You're being positioned because you've proven that you can be trusted. You've allowed God to crush you. You've stayed when others walked. You've worshipped when you didn't get the answer. You've returned to the altar when you could have chosen bitterness. And now, heaven is ready to move through you, not in part, but in full. You've been faithful with the silence. Now God is trusting you with sound, but not sound that entertains, sound that breaks open dry ground, sound that releases captives, sound that reintroduces heaven to a people numbed by religion and starved of glory. You're not just a vessel, you're a quake, a walking, living move of God. It is written in the book of Acts, Chapter 16, verse 26. Suddenly, there was such a violent earthquake that the foundations of the prison were shaken. At once, all the prison doors flew open, and everyone's chains came loose. That's what you're becoming. Not just someone who escapes prisons, but someone who shakes foundations so that others can walk free. That's the kind of mantle you carry. That's the kind of oil that rests on your life. It was never about building a platform. It was about becoming a portal, a place where heaven touches earth. But make no mistake, this kind of influence costs everything. You cannot live like the world and carry what heaven has placed on you. You cannot entertain distractions and expect to walk in full authority. You cannot halfway obey and expect full breakthrough. The shaking doesn't come through talent, it comes through consecration. And you've already begun to walk in it. That's why your life doesn't look like everyone else's. That's why you're still being stripped of things you thought you needed. That's why even your prayers are changing. You don't ask for comfort anymore, you ask for clarity. You don't pray for applause, you ask for presence. You don't beg for breakthrough, you declare it. Because you've become something different, something dangerous. You've become an earthquake in the spirit, and everything is shifting. You are crowned for this generation, not by people, not by popularity, not by the systems of this world, but by the hand of God Himself. Your crown wasn't given in public, it was forged in the fire, placed upon your spirit long before you ever knew the weight you would carry. You didn't ask for this. You didn't campaign for it. You didn't manipulate your way into it. You were chosen anointed for such a time as this. From the beginning, God saw the shaking that would hit the world. He saw the confusion, the rebellion, the identity crisis, the spiritual famine. And He said, I need a voice. I need a vessel. I need someone I can trust. And He looked at you. Yes, you, with your story, with your weaknesses, with your long nights and secret battles, with the shame you tried to bury and the faith you fought to keep. God saw all of it and still said, I choose you. Not because you were the most qualified, but because you were willing to be crushed. Because you said yes when others walked away. Because you stayed at the altar long after the crowd had moved on. Because you didn't chase platforms, you chased presence. Because you let the fire refine you instead of running from it. This crown was not cheaply given. It was earned in surrender. You carry the oil of endurance, the wisdom of pain, the fire of conviction. And now, you're stepping into a place of influence, not for your glory, but for His. You are becoming a voice in the wilderness, a beacon for the lost, a mirror for those who have forgotten who they are. And you are not just crowned to carry it, you're crowned to conquer. There are territories in the Spirit that your voice will open. There are captives who will only be freed when you rise. There are dry bones that will breathe again when you speak. You are not ordinary. You are not another echo in the noise. You are a prophetic disruption called to awaken a sleeping generation. And that's why your journey has looked nothing like theirs. The isolation, the stretching, the silence, the seasons where it felt like God stripped you of everything. Those weren't setbacks, they were strategy. You weren't being punished. You were being positioned. Positioned for impact. Positioned for glory. Positioned to lead, not from charisma, but from consecration. It is written in the book of Esther, chapter 4, verse 14. And who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this, such a time as this. That's why the enemy tried to confuse you. That's why the attacks intensified right before this moment. That's why everything tried to convince you you were disqualified. Because this moment was always coming, and hell knew it before you did. But you didn't fold. You didn't break. And now, you're crowned. You're not crowned with gold or fame. You're crowned with fire, with insight, with divine responsibility. You don't wear it to be admired, you wear it to carry weight. The weight of intercession, the weight of obedience, the weight of showing up when no one claps and standing firm when others fall away. You are not the future, you are the now. Heaven isn't waiting for someone else. The mantle is on you. And no, you won't always feel ready, but you don't need to be ready when God has already appointed you. Your authority doesn't come from what you feel. It comes from who sent you, and He's sending you now into hard places, into broken systems, into dark corners that have never seen the light. But you won't go empty-handed. You'll go with the Spirit of the living God, with the Word like fire in your bones, with clarity sharpened by obedience, with boldness refined by silence. This is the hour. You were born for it. You were crowned for it. You've been prepared thoroughly, painfully, intentionally for this generation. And while the world may not understand your anointing, heaven has already approved it. You are stepping into prophetic fulfillment, not in your own name, but in the name of the one who called you. And everything that once resisted, you will now witness what obedience births. Now rise. Now walk. Now lead. You're not waiting on destiny. Destiny has been waiting on you. Chosen one. If you made it this far, it's because something in your spirit refused to scroll past your calling. This wasn't just a video. This was a visitation, a divine encounter disguised in human language. A series of wake-up calls stitched together with fire, truth, and grace. And now, standing at the end of it all, the question isn't, what did you feel? It's what will you do? You've heard heaven speak. You've been reminded of your assignment. You've seen why the warfare was so heavy, why the rejection was so painful, why the wilderness was so long. It all led here, to this moment of alignment. Don't let it pass. Don't let this just be a message that stirred you for a few minutes and then faded into memory. Let this be a marker, a turning point, a spiritual milestone you never forget. Let it mark the hour you stopped running, stopped hiding, stopped shrinking, and stepped fully into who you are. If your heart was lit on fire by this, do not keep it to yourself. Like this message as a sign of agreement. Comment below with what God spoke to you, your yes, your breakthrough, your moment of awakening. Share this with someone else who needs to remember who they are. And above all, subscribe, because this isn't just a one-time message. This is a movement of God's chosen ones, and staying connected means staying aligned with the flow of heaven. You are not alone. You are not late. You are not too broken. You are crowned, called, and commissioned. Welcome to the beginning of everything God had in mind for you.